All right. Well, let's get going. People show up. For everybody here, I will send out a recording of this. If you showed up, you'll get a recording. If you registered, you'll get a recording also. So let me start. Welcome and thank you for spending the time here. Um, Quick frame before we start. I am not a former broker, and that surprises a lot of people. Um, I spent 36 years on the client side of the business, and yes, I am an old fart. I'm 67 years old. Um, and I worked as a principal, developer, investor, capital partner across about well over $2 billion worth of transactions in office, industrial, retail, and hospitality. Um, During those 36 years, I hired literally hundreds of brokers. And I also fired a lot of brokers. And what I'm talking about today comes from my experience as that client. So today it's going to be 40 minutes, probably even a little bit shorter than that. This is not a lengthy topic. And then we'll have live Q&A until all your questions are answered. I'm going to run you through an audit that I do with my clients that tells you in a single afternoon which clients are actually worth your time. And as we all know, one of your most valuable assets is your time. And after you run this office audit, you'll find out which clients are quietly costing you your next deal. You'll leave with a sorted book and a number that's going to tell you how healthy your book actually is and clients that you need to fire. So, and I'm sure we all have had clients that would love to fire, but we just hang on and hang on and hang on just because of that potential that they might give you some business. But this will give you an idea of really how you need to spend your time with your past clients and where you focus your time. So let's dive in. So your calendar isn't full of clients, it's full of relationships that already paid out and a few that never will. Our whole job today is learning to tell them apart. Um, as it says there, I mean, your contact list, past clients are just that. I mean, they were client one time, one hit wonders, whatever, and it results in what I like to refer to as a phantom book. Um, it's the gap between your clients on your roster and the clients actually paying you. Most of your book isn't a book, it's a contact list with good memories. And this isn't a loyalty problem, it's a concentration problem. So let's talk about the concentration curve here. Um, Most clients, or most brokers, excuse me, uh, the top 20%, the old, Pareto principle rings true here, is that about 20% of your clients end up providing you with about 80% of your gross commissions. The next 30% of your clients, based on sheer numbers, is about 15% of your GCI. And then your bottom 50%, literally half of your past clients, provide under 5% of your gross commissions. And the unfortunate problem here is that from a time standpoint, you service all three of these tiers the same. And some in that bottom 50%, under 5% GCI, take up a lot more time, as you well know, than a lot of in the other two categories up above them. So what we want to do today is figure out how to spend your time. So, and a lot of the brokers that I kept hiring weren't the ones with the most clients. I mean, well, a lot of the brokers that I worked with over the years could list on their hand, a series of five or six or seven relationships that really drove their book. And from a client standpoint, I could also talk to those clients if I've never worked with that broker before and find out, exactly how that broker operates. And it made it much easier to hire that broker. So the hidden cost, 70% of your working hours go to clients who generate about 20% of your income. We call this the servicing drag, and what happens is it just compounds day in and day out. Um, and you're just then the result is that it just doesn't give you enough time to chase the deals that you should actually be chasing. And as I said earlier, your time is without a doubt the most important, most important valuable asset. I'm sorry, I've got a dog that looks like he's going to throw up behind me. So uh, I apologize for the distraction. So he just flopped down. Okay, I guess he's okay. Sorry, I got so why the reframe here. Why fairness fails? I mean, the old way, and probably a lot of you are treating every client the same, out of fairness, out of being, treating that client, the best you possibly can. And the reframe that we want to try to work on here is to match your effort to the value. And we want to go from a fairness idea to, a specific strategy. And there are obviously past clients that you worked with that provide much more value to you than others do. And we want to make sure your time is spent with those focusing on those clients as opposed to the ones that don't. Okay. Now, that's a tough thing for brokers to, really transition to. And I understand that. And it's not the easiest thing in the world, but the mechanics I'm going to show you in a little bit make it pretty concrete, pretty mathematical. And so, you'll come away with a way to be able to do it and not get that guilty feeling at the end of the day. So this is the tool that I use, and it's a really, really simple tool. It's a matrix, and there's all sorts of frameworks based on, this four box matrix. Um, and it's what I sit down with my clients and we take it, and I'll run you through exactly how we do this. But this is a tool that we run on a quarterly basis, and we go through this, and it tells you which are your clients, rest in one of these four quadrants. And obviously, when we get done with this, you'll understand that there's, one client that's the most important, two are, second and third, and then the fourth is, you know, not worth your time kind of thing. So there's, the basis of this is we score every client. There's two axes here. You can see the GCI contribution, um, and then their future potential along the two axes here and here. Okay. And then we go score them. So, and what we do is, and I'll run you through, step by step here. What we do is, so step one, let me pull this up. Oh, I forgot this. So one of the things we want to focus on is the concentration ratio, the share of the GCI that comes from your top five clients. If you can't name that number, you're managing your book by feel kind of thing. So, I'm sure a lot of you could name this. That's nothing, earth shattering. But let me go into how we actually do. Let me get down. Okay, let me get my notes here in front of me. Okay. Okay. We'll go. I'll skip over. So this is how we do it. Okay. The first thing you do is pull the last 24 months of closed gross commissions by client. Actuals only, no estimates, no gut feel, exact numbers. And we do it for 2 years because it smooths out, a single lumpy deal year. Because we're going to be scoring that relationship, not the transaction. So hopefully there's more than, one transaction that you can rely on to do this. Then the next step is rating the potential of each client. So we rate each client on a scale of 1 to 5, and you can use 1 to 10 or whatever you like. And we primarily do it on three things. It's the simplest way to do it. It's monetarily based. You can add other things into this if you want to, because sometimes I have clients do that. But the three things are repeat likelihood, referral power, and growth runway. And so, obviously, if you're an investment sales and, you're working with a developer or investor, and they have, you know, you know, tens of buildings, hundreds of buildings, whatever, repeat likelihood is probably pretty strong. Then the next is the referral power. How well are they connected? Are they connected to other people, other investors, other developers? Other tenants, that kind of thing. And then the growth. I mean, and I'm sure you look at this all the time, is, is that client growing? Are they, actively investing? Are they, growing their business if you're in tenant rep, that kind of thing. So you take and score each of them. I like to do it on 1 through 5 and give each of that client a number for each one of those. It's like a 5, a 4, and a 3 kind of thing. And then, can either average it or add it up, whatever you like to do to come up with a number. Okay. Then what you do is plot them. We go back to here and plot this on this axis right here. you know, how do they, from a GCI contribution, where are they along this line? And then the future potential, their score of 1 to 15, you start running that, and then you see how they filter out into these boxes. So let me get back to the other slide. So you plot this out, and they'll start filling out all the quadrants, and then the next thing to do once you've got them all sorted out is what I like to refer to as assign the play. Every client gets, oop, there we go. Watch them sort out, fill the 4 quadrants. Okay. And everybody ends up in a box. It's, deepen, invest, maintain, or graduate. And here we go. So, if they end up in the top box, the anchors, most of your time should be spent here. You want to deepen that relationship as best you possibly can, and, obviously defend it as best you possibly can. And this is where a majority of the time you should be spent. Okay. The second box is, the builders, deliberate investment. They are probably somewhere out in the future, maybe. But they want, they're going to become hopefully next year's anchors at that top box. But you want to start working on them now. And so, the next your next batch of time spent should be on these. Okay. The last group is the third group is the harvest group. This is where you want to, not write them off. Um, we don't want to do that with this group, but you want to systematize the service. And, when I work with my clients, we have campaigns or whatever that we work on that we're frequently in front of them, but we're not whining and dining them. We're reaching out to them on a periodic basis. We're keeping them on an email list and sending them out information, and it's not just a quarterly market report or whatever. It's pertinent to them, what's going on in the market, what your views are on the market, kind of thing. And then the last group, and this is where always get the biggest pushback, is um, exit. Uh, this bottom quadrant is you need to shed it. And I get pushback all the time on this. But when we start looking at the time spent with these folks versus the time they could be spending on marketing or sales or with these other three groups, it becomes clear. Now, there's ways that you can do this, and it's not like, just cut off all service or whatever, but, I've got a couple tenant rep folks that I'm working with right now, and the questions come up, and it's been like, I've got one of these clients, that I first started working with. I got in the business, and they've got 4,000 square feet, and they've got a renewal coming up or whatever. And the solution there is, just become the leader and their contact person, and then work with somebody else, a junior broker, somebody who's coming up, got a couple of years in the business, kind of thing, to work on doing everything other than a phone conversation with these clients, and then slowly wean them off. It's not like just cut it off or whatever, but and just you do a little commission share with the junior broker, and um, slowly wean them off. And then, a year or two from now, or the next transaction, and, they sign a 5-year deal, then you can just hand it off to the junior broker, kind of thing. So, uh, it's not just, it's not, cut them off and don't ever return their phone call, but there's ways you can transition out of that, and do it, gracefully, still maintain the relationship, but it just doesn't suck up a lot of your time. Okay. Um, and one of the biggest struggles in why I see a lot of brokers, and I work with a lot of brokers that are, sort of senior brokers, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 years in the business, sort of hitting that plateau, is that this is one of the reasons they can't do that, is that they don't prime or prune their clients. Um, one of the biggest things is, when we look at a client's book, and, the transactions they've done, I mean, and it's pretty straightforward, is that, the smaller the client, they typically take about the same amount of time in the transaction than the larger one that's twice the size. And if you don't start pruning those smaller ones and getting your average deal size up, you're never ever going to be able to grow your book. It can happen, you'll hit some big deals, and all of a sudden, but it always comes back to bite you a year or two later when you hit a trough. But you've got to learn how to do this, from the marketing side, you know, trying to, chase larger deals, focusing on those larger deals, not doing the smaller deals, and then pruning, these clients out of your book such that, they don't put a drag on your time and you can go forward. and grow your book. So, one of the numbers that we track all the time with my clients is, the average deal size. And, you know, it's amazing, every quarter, if we can get up, a couple $1,000 in average deal size and start working that number up, the difference it makes. Because, in reality, the larger clients are typically a little more sophisticated, and those deals are probably taking less of your time than, the smaller deals. So, once you start doing that, getting the time that you need to be able to chase larger deals, you'll start to see a significant change in your book. So, the sunk cost client, the long relationship you keep because of history, not economics. It's not a tier. Run the audit on everyone, including your favorite people. Now, one of the things I sort of glossed over when going through the quadrant. I want to talk about that for a second. We'll do this. When you're rating your uh, potential. Um, One of the other things that you may want to think about is how much of a pain in the butt they are also, and how much of a time sink they are. And you could score, the three, 555, but then you could give them, if they're a pain in the butt and a total time waster, and just drive you crazy. You could put some negative numbers in there too, to rate the potential. Because, even if they have fives across the board, but um, it just drives you crazy, and you just don't like them as a client, I would, think about rating the quality of the client also, as one of the additional potential numbers, so you don't get sucked into a time sink, even though it's a great client numbers wise. Okay. And so we're going to get down to the three takeaways. Your book is concentrated, but most of it isn't paying you. And so you really want to, focus on that potential. Do an audit on the two axes, and it's real simple to do. Just take a sheet of paper, draw out the two axes, gross commissions on the left-hand side, and then, the horizontal axis is the potential, and just plot them out there with the two numbers. What's their gross commission number, and what's the potential number that I gave them, and plot them. And then once they, sort of filter out into those four quadrants, it gives you your priority in terms of how to service them. So it's a very, very simple process. It makes it a little bit more, well, what was the best term? Strategic, mathematical, systematic, in terms of, how you you know service these clients. And the biggest thing is the resulting, time that you save, which, all every broker that I work with is always just, going crazy. I mean, they're just so busy. They're so busy. They're so busy. And, getting time to do, some of the little things is really, really, really difficult. And once you take some of these clients out of the equation, you'll find yourself getting back on track with doing the things that you need to do, especially in servicing those really, high important clients or whatever. So, um, the, you're happy. I will put, I'll send out. I didn't get the link before I got here. I was sort of rushed, but be happy to run through this with you, if you want. In the email with the recording, I'll send out a link if you want to, book a session with me and go through this. I'm happy to do that, if you'd like. Um, it's free. It's not a big deal, and I'll run you through it. And, if you just come to the call with, going through the past 2 years and, auditing it. And then, with the GCIs for your clients, the full client list and their GCIs. And then we'll sit down and rank them. And sometimes it's always good to have a third party sit down with you and sort of ask you the tough questions about the reality of clients. Because I was sitting down with a client the other day and we were going through his CRM, and he had this group labeled his top 50 prospects, and and I'm going through, and we were going through them one by one, and it was pretty funny. um, and I asked some sort of tough questions about the reality about how good a prospect this was. And this broker was a tenant rep broker, and it was like, well, this is a referral, but I don't really know when their lease expires or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, that's probably not your top. Let's move them down. So, um, long story short is at the end of this session, we had like five top 50. So. Um, a little third-party scrutiny is always helpful. I guess that's why coaching exists. But happy to do this and run you through it. So yeah, I can free up some more of your time. So that's the presentation. This was a quick one. Nothing too complicated. Didn't want to, rail on theory on this. I just wanted to give you sort of the meat and potatoes on how to do this. And so, happy to open this up for questions. And I'll stop the share so you can. So any questions, folks, or about anything? Feel free to ask questions about anything. I'm happy to answer anything that you might have.
Yeah, I have a
Hey,
question.
Brian, how you doing? I see you're here. Mark, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I
Yep,
mean,
Steph, I'm here.
one of the, I guess most of my main clients that I work with are, well, they used to be just like industrial tenant rep, which I'm moving away from because, it's just doesn't, it's like gambling. But so I basically try to work with like owner users, but they're kind of like one and I want to try to move more towards like sales rather than just like leasing their space out. I can have my partner help me with that one. But owner users are like once in a while, there's not really a lot of tenants out there, regional, that have more than one space. So, I mean, is that something I should think about, like looking at other types of clients instead of those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I had
Only.
a client that tried to do that and he was in Orange County, California, which is a pretty solid market,
Yeah.
and a lot of users. And to be honest with you, and I hate to, burst your bubble, but he had a real difficult time trying to just build it off of owner users. And he needed to scale up to focusing on more regional developers and investors beyond owners and users. Because, an owner user, one, first and foremost, that building is probably their biggest asset. Okay. So it's really, really important to them. Moving, is, out of not usually more than necessity. It's like they have to kind of thing if they're growing or whatever, but
Yeah.
that's rare. Um, and they're very sentimental about buildings. They're really difficult to work with. And they'll occupy buildings, for years and years and years. And it's just a struggle. And their business in a lot of cases goes up and down. So I think, a good successful broker, the rule of thumb is 40% of your business is repeat business. Now, that's not to say that, referral business is probably helpful, but I think, looking at, smaller developers, owner builder, developer, multi-building owners, that are sort of the pipeline for creating those, owner user buildings would be somebody I would probably focus on also.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I gotta, I have like some owner user. They used to be an owner user, and um, now I just lease their building out for them. They're retired, but and you try to tell them like, hey, you could 1031 into like a CVS for a 15-year deal, and
Yeah.
they can't even take like a micro step in that direction.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you've got a lot of boomers that, above and beyond industrial. You've got these boomers that, own real estate. They're old. They don't want to manage it anymore. The kids that they thought that they wanted to give the property to don't want it. They want the they want the money, you know.
Yeah,
And the boomer doesn't want to sell because it's been their life for probably a long
yeah.
period of time. So, those struggles, I mean, you need to go to, just sort of, and it doesn't need to be a lot of people, but you can do that, but you just obviously need more volume to do that, right? You need to, identify a lot of owner users, right? But try to get, sort of that top quadrant of folks to be, smaller investors, developer types.
Oh, okay.
That answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that yeah, owner user thing is like not a lot of hard to build momentum with that one.
Yeah, I mean, it
Um,
just the client that I had, I mean, he was probably, top third broker in Orange County, and he did industrial and sort of, smaller office. So, small building stuff in Orange County. And he tried to go, the owner user route, and he just ran into roadblocks all the time. I mean, it was just even when clients were, like busting at the seams in their buildings, and needed like 25% more space, because they were growing, they had a hard time moving. I mean, it just, there's just the thought of, moving and, depending upon what their business was or whatever. I mean, it was just the thought of having to move and relocate and, location and because, a lot of those owner users have buildings that they've owned for 10 or 15 years and they live 10 minutes away,
yeah.
and they can't find a new building that, because it's like an hour away, kind of thing. And it's like, I don't want to move. So I think you're swimming upstream, against a lot of things where, if you could, curate, 25% of people that are small investors, whatever, I think it would help you a lot. Not to say that you can't do those deals, because I think there's great loyalty and there's great referral opportunities there, but I think building your entire book on it is really difficult.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, good to know. So, like in smaller investors, like because I mean, what the market I'm working is basically like West Inland Empire,
Hmm.
and I consider it kind of like filled up. So I just had never thought that there would be smaller investors or developers buying industrial properties because they're pretty expensive and
Yeah. Yeah. I,
but
I, I actually coached a team in Western Inland Empire, that all they did was buildings under 100,000 square feet. And they did really well.
oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was a combination of owner users, a lot of investors. You'll be surprised, I think, once you do the research,
Okay.
how many small investors there are, in the Inland Empire, especially Inland Empire. I used to live in Orange County, so
Okay.
um, you know, so I know, and I've done millions of square feet of development in the Inland Empire. But there's a whole group of small investor developers that own building, for sort of city of industry, sort of, east of that, to take a look at.
Yeah, okay.
All
And
right.
then thanks. You had mentioned on the builders quadrant, um, how do you kind of know like just from like talking to them, like how do you know they actually have legs? Like um and aren't just like a one-hit wonder.
Well, I mean, obviously, I mean, you've got to qualify your clients. And I think, knowing that they own more than one building or what they're doing, are they raising money? If you're in tenant rep or, is their business growing or whatever? Um, it's just, you've got to ask those questions. I mean, you've got to become, and this is so cliche, I hate to say it, but you've got to become more of an advisor than a, transactor kind of thing. And, you know, spend the time to understand their business and, what the levers are in their business, what's working really, really well for them and what's not working really, really well for them. Because once you can dive into that, I think you get a better understanding of how successful they're going to be as a thing. So
Yeah, okay.
it's
Thanks.
you got to have that sort of heart to heart. It's like it's yeah, real estate's important, but let me understand your business first, so I can make sure that we're doing the right thing for you. Did that answer all your questions, Mark?
Yeah.
Anybody else got questions? I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Is everybody good?
I've got a
Well, good.
question.
Oh, go ahead, Robbie.
Um, so I'm kind of just getting started in my role right now, and
Hmm.
my biggest thing is like it's hard for me to know how to like quantify these people when I feel like I'm trying to grasp at any lead I do have. And so how can using this, what would you say is the best way to be able to um, choose your I guess there's when I'm prospecting, I find people who could have a need, and I'm not really sure. And so, is it just spending the extra time to quantify them before like
Well,
um, putting them in
what
a box?
what specifically are you doing right now? What I mean, are you doing investment? Are you
Yeah,
doing
I'm mainly
invest
doing industrial leasing, so
invest?
mainly on the tenant rep side, looking to get hoping to earn some agency as well. But
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a great place to start. First and foremost, I think the tenant rep side. Um, I think, one of the things you have to understand, especially as a tenant rep broker, is that the decision makers worry about real estate less than 1/10 of 1% of their time.
right,
It's a single transaction in a lot of cases that comes every 5 or 10 years or 3 years or whatever. So that's really not, real estate is really not at the forefront of what their concerns are, except when, leases are expiring or, they've got growth or they get, got to retract or, shrink their business or whatever. So I think the biggest thing is that what you can do is, you know, get a prospect, on the phone and have them talk about their business to you. be very upfront and open and say, hey, I'm starting in this business and I'm doing tenant rep and I'm focusing in the industrial space and, I'm trying to learn this business and, you know, the best way I can do this is to understand the drivers from folks like you about, what shapes their real estate decisions. And that's, it's going to be real difficult to find people that are going to want to talk about that. So don't worry about, people that don't want to talk to you. Just, focus on the people that will be able to help you out kind of thing.
That makes sense. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No problem. Yeah, no, I mean, it's, I'm not saying it's easy, but, you'll get people that will be willing to talk about their business. Not a lot of detail. And obviously, if things aren't going well, they're probably not going to be that straightforward, and open about what's going on. But, I mean, just understanding their drivers for their real estate decisions will probably get you at least, a conversation here or there and may give you some business in the long run kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then just kind of put them on a some sort of contact list just to be able to follow up with them in the future.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and it's questions like, if you're calling on them and they're, where they're located and you say, I saw that you leased this building 3 years ago. Tell me about, how do you like your building? If it's an industrial building, it's like, I noticed that it only has a 24-foot clear height. How's that working for you? Um, a lot of buildings are 30-foot clear. Does 24 work for you? And it's like, oh yeah, we just do pallets or whatever. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, so do you have a lot of throughput? I mean, do you have a lot of traffic, trucks coming through your facility? Just ask questions like that. You'll learn a lot. And they'll be probably happy to talk about it to answer the questions. Other than the broker that gets on the phone and says, "Hey, how you doing? When's your lease expire?" Because they get that 90% of the time. Try to have a conversation.
Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, anybody else? Well, I think we're going to stick a fork in it. I want to thank y'all for showing up. Uh, I got sort of an announcement for those who are staying here. You'll probably see it because I'll send you an email on it. But I'm launching two new coaching programs. One is an online program, and another is a group program. The website's going to be live in the next day or two for it. It's obviously a much different price point than the one-to-one coaching, but just wanted to let you know that there are options out there that are affordable on the coaching space. And everything that I've been talking through on these webinars is included, in those two programs. So you'll see that information coming out here in the next day or two. So the website will launch depending upon how much stuff I get done today, either today or tomorrow. So, and I'll send out a notice, and it'll be, it's not non-sales. I'll just let you know that it's out there and available if that's of interest to you. So, all right. Anything else, folks? I will call it done. Thank you all for showing up. Appreciate it.